Welcome to the Miscellaneous Film Festival, the podcast for curiously curated films. I'm Jacin.
And I'm Dustin.
And this is the Hot as a Bee Movie Fest.
Hot as a bee movie, can't look away. Cheesy lines and action come what may. Hot as a bee movie, every single day. We're living in the moment, feeling this way.
It's a rainy 40 degrees in Portland, and we've got 5 films to get you fucking hot, baby. From the dystopian deserts of Australia to the sweet heat of 80s Miami, Orlando, all bookended by the fires of hell itself. Thank you for helping me put this together. This is all about B movies. And you and I talked for, I think, literally 3 hours the other night trying to pick 5 movies to talk about. I had not seen any of yours. I don't think you'd seen either of mine.
Correct. Yeah.
So we're talking about Abby from 1974, the blaxploitation version of The Exorcist. Then Red Sun from 1971, Turkey Shoot from 1982, Miami Connection, the infamous Miami Connection from 1987, and then Petey Wheatstraw with Rudy Ray Moore himself from 1977.
We've got bookended blaxploitation. It's great.
This just came out of a love for B movies, and you and I talking about schlock and trash.
Yeah, something that we talked about when we were together was, it's great that people are talking about all these awesome movies on this podcast. They all have really great taste. Where's the love for the true believer trash? Like not the stuff that not the home recordings that your mom made of you, not the movies that are trying to be bad. We're going to get into B movie definitions and what we believe about them. But the movies that attempt to be great, somewhere along the way fail and become greater than the director could have ever possibly imagined.
I mean, that's for sure. Miami Connection was a passion project.
Yes, it was.
that went through its whole odyssey of obscurity to now not just infamy, but actual genuine appreciation. It's a classic for a lot of people.
For me, yeah, it definitely is. It's honestly like I'd be perfectly fine picking that movie along with Amadeus as like 2 of my favorite movies. Like they make me feel so incredible whenever I watch them.
One of my favorite B movies is Troll 2.
Absolutely.
Something I look for in a B movie, like a variety of action, variety of comic bits. You're getting more than just, it's not monotone.
Yeah, and it's not people just running around the woods for like an hour and a half, which a lot of those B movies, like the Rambo ripoffs, like Deadly Prey is different. That movie's a gold mine, but there's many like lesser Deadly Preys, which are just people running through the woods and someone in a monster costume. Like that, it could have been made in the 50s, right?
You're talking about Deadly Prey, which is not on our list, but I was going to bring it up anyway.
I love that movie.
1987. It's a Most Dangerous Game / Rambo.
Yes.
Rip off.
Starring not Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, starring just some blonde guy with muscles who can't get out of that vat of KY. You recommended that as one of your favorite movies, that I watched it, and I think part of appreciating B movies is they have to catch you at the right time.
Absolutely.
You have to meet it at the right time. The other night was the right time for me and Deadly Prey because I laughed my ass off.
It's so wonderful. Yeah. All the funny, all the weird choices. And that's something that I love about my favorite B movies is the director obviously has a vision. They are not a good filmmaker, but God damn it, they have a vision. And to hell or high water, they're going to make it work somehow. And it leads to a lot of bizarre decisions. Like another favorite B movie of mine is Doll Man. And it is, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but Doll Man it's a science fiction movie about a man. He's
so cute. I mean, he's a real doll, baby.
He's like a space cop from his planet. But he comes to Earth because of some malfunction with his ship. And on our planet, he's only like a foot tall. And that's the movie. And it is so great.
Oh man,
there's so many good B movies like that, and from the sounds of it, it sounds like you liked Miami Connection. I can't wait to talk about this.
Well, first I wanted to define what a B movie is.
Oh yes, okay.
It's a fun part of movie history that, like back in the day, movie palaces were really doing everything to try and give you the most bang for your buck. So you would go to see a movie, and oftentimes you would be able to buy a ticket to a double feature. And there'd be the A movie, which is some big, well-produced, high-budget movie from the studio. And afterwards, you could stick around and watch the B movie, which would probably be 20 minutes shorter. It'll be a genre film, like a Western, maybe even a Western serial.
Right.
Or as they got into the 50s and like the space race and started and things, sci-fi movies and horror/thriller movies, like a lot of Vincent Price vehicles.
You mean like the Roger Corman, Vincent Price movies? All of those wonderful, they were all done on the same set type movies.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's why they were called B movies, is because they were usually done with recycled props, recycled sets, much lower budget. But then that's where a lot of our quote unquote cult movies come from.
Yeah.
And they would move into obscurity, like later on when people are trying to preserve the great movies, they were the A movies and not necessarily the B movies. But now there's so much film appreciation for those actors, those quote unquote cult actors, and those old B movies, that's why we're here, is because, I mean, Abby, that we're going to talk about, I don't know what copy you saw. The copy I saw, the film was terrible. The color was obviously not preserved well, and it wasn't remastered or restored.
Yeah, there's no 4K scan coming anytime soon.
Yeah. Some of the movies we're going to talk about could even be labeled with an epithet that I have some strong feelings about, which is so bad they're good. When I talk to people who use that phrase, I feel that it's mocking. Like they don't really appreciate it. They don't actually think the movie's good. They just want to laugh at the obvious puppet with a monster.
Right.
Or that you can see sneakers under the barbarian's boots. The bad dubbing makes them laugh.
Well, that's even like some of the best Italian movies.
Right.
Right. You know, like there's really bad dubbing in the spaghetti westerns, but I love those movies, and those are like some of the best directed movies ever.
And to me, I like the B movies and the cult movies and the schlock and trash movies where there's actually a really good script underneath there, or really good performances, or I actually enjoyed the storytelling in the movie start to finish, and I'm not making fun of it. I genuinely like it.
Yeah, my favorite B movies, I see the director is like this kind of like starry-eyed child, right? And they're so excited to have a budget at all, and they just throw everything at the wall, and like most of it doesn't stick, but we're left with the solution to what happened to that, right, as viewers. And it's kind of a glorious mess, but it's a glorious mess that I revel in. Like these movies genuinely make me happy. I don't put them on to be cynical and just to like trash on someone's low skill. Like a lot of these movies I actually like quite a bit and would watch them even alone, because oftentimes these movies are like for parties, right?
I will love those movies, warts and all. The kind of the qualifier for me, I think Deadly Prey fits this either through the editing process or the director stages scenes with angles and timings and reactions that maybe are supposed to be dramatic or intense, like for a fight scene, and they actually hit more of the beats of comedy. Like, I don't want to laugh at somebody's mistake, but I will laugh at a movie where a scene plays out and it's hilarious because it plays out comedically. It's a genuinely funny scene. I'm not to laugh at somebody, but I'm laughing because they did comedy really well. And I will recognize that, okay, maybe that wasn't their intention.
Yeah. And, you know, it's also, I think, telling of certain people that watch B movies. Are they watching it as a bully or as someone who's genuinely appreciating someone's best effort?
Yeah.
And I fall in the latter category, and it sounds like you do too. Like, I genuinely am happy and my life is better when I watch these movies because there's so much joy that's being delivered to me. And if it was just bad and I was making fun of it out of like cynicism, I wouldn't get that same kind of joy unless I was some sort of sociopath. There's genuine things to love in B movies.
Well, let's get into the 5 movies we picked. There are so many great B movies. We could, like I said the other night, we talked for hours, but these are the 5 we settled on. The first one is Abby from 1974, directed by William Girdler. It stars Carol Speed and the great William Marshall. The great William Marshall. The synopsis is, When a minister's wife becomes possessed by Eshu, the Nigerian god of sexuality, an exorcist is called in to drive the evil spirit away. And I will jump in first, and I will say, Eshu is not the Nigerian god of sexuality. Eshu is the god of crossroads, duality, new beginnings, travelers, fertility, and death, and serves as an intermediary between humans and the collected deities of Yoruba land, the Orisha. Yeah, I was absolutely thrilled that in the first 5 minutes we're talking about Nigerian spirituality and mythology, and I just did my nerdy thing where I paused the movie, do a deep dive, and read all about this because I was getting ready to stand up for history and be like, oh, great, we're going to demonize somebody else's culture, which they start to, and then reveal that it's wrong. I think this movie, surprisingly, in 1974, did a great job of acting out a transgression against another culture, a mistranslation, and then working to correct it, presenting the correct information. The audience could leave knowing that calling Eshu an evil demon is wrong. The name Eshu was mistranslated as a parallel to devil or Satan.
Right.
And stayed that way forever, because it wasn't even until like 2019 that Nigerians were able to petition Google Translate to update their translation in the Yoruba language to say that Eshu is a deity, is a person, and not just another name for Satan.
Yeah, and it makes the movie really unique. I actually had forgotten quite a bit of it because I did rewatch it. And then the other two that I chose, which were Miami Connection and Petey Wheatstraw, I know those movies intimately, so I had to go back and revisit Abby, and it's less of a ripoff of The Exorcist than I remember.
It's not. Actually,
there's a lot of beats that are there, right? Like even up to the Austin Stoker is cast, one of my favorite blaxploitation actors. He's also in Assault on Precinct 13 by John Carpenter, one of my favorite movies.
Oh,
yeah, he's the lead, and he's like one of those guys who never got a career, and he should have. He is on that long list of people that deserved a real chance.
Cool.
But no, he's also in the fifth Planet of the Apes movie, which is atrocious. I think that this being pulled from theaters, for those who don't know, this movie was released and then pulled from theaters because it was seen as way too close to The Exorcist. And upon looking at it, like, okay,
right.
the girl gets possessed by a demon in a small town, a priest comes in to be exorcised. That's true. But pretty much all of that goes out the window at the halfway point when our demon, our possessed woman, starts to go down to bars and have deadly sex with other black men in cars, which is so great.
That would have been, Abby is such a vague title. Deadly Sex would have been a better title. But it would have gotten me to watch it sooner. It was very clear, I think at the time even, there wasn't a lot of similarities between this and The Exorcist. However, nowadays we're very used to the haunting of movies or possession movies coming out like maybe 2 a year or more.
Right. Back then, Exorcist rewrote what horror was. I do know that the director / writer, which of the two it was, I do know that they were capitalizing on the hype of The Exorcist, but their idea was that we're going to use The Exorcist to boost this movie, not that we're just straight up copying it.
It was written by one of the producers, and the story was developed by the producer, Gordon Cornell Lynn, and the director, William Girdler. This is the kind of deep dive I'll do. I found out that The Exorcist was released in theaters on December 26th, 1973. Abby was released in theaters December 25th, 1974. So
almost a year later. Yeah.
So that means that they had time to see The Exorcist, and Abby was clearly filmed like in the summer.
Right. And not in Georgetown.
And not in Georgetown. So they had time to see The Exorcist, write a script, throw it in production, knock it out, and get it ready for release at the same time for the following winter season. So I think some intention was to ride that wave.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think they were working on this ahead of The Exorcist and went, oh, good, we can we can kind of piggyback off of The Exorcist. I think they were
Right. That'd be like saying Blackula was like made in complete isolation to the Hammer horror films that were coming out, right? Like Blackula is totally riding a wave also. Now I love Blackula.
Yeah.
But, you know, it probably wouldn't have existed because the Bela Lugosi Dracula was old at that point. It was probably the Christopher Lee Hammer horror films from the UK that really, like, you know, prompted them to make it.
And it was William Marshall, who plays Bishop Garrett Williams in Abbey, played Prince Mamuwalde in Blackula 1972. I use his name because Prince Mamuwalde was actually a really cool character. Like Blackula starts with this African prince coming to Transylvania or wherever before that's where he gets turned, and meeting with European leaders and princes in like the 16 or 1700s and saying, you people need to stop coming to Africa and stop exploiting our resources and stealing our people. Thank you. This is a
Yeah.
Blackula should be addressing that. And I've heard other podcasters say it would have been awesome if once he got turned, if he was like, cool, I'm going to go to America and eat a whole bunch of slave owners.
Yes, and something also that's great about William Marshall, he actually did get some due in popular culture because he's in more than just Abbey, right? He's, of course, in Blackula, but he's also in Star Trek. It has to be said. He plays
in Star Trek?
He's like a minor character. He's like some scientist. I think it's called the Daystrom Institute, but I cannot even remember what it's related to.
Oh, that's so cool.
Isn't it great? Yeah, there's so many randos that show up in that. But I love Star Trek. It's my second favorite soap opera. The best one, of course, being World Wrestling Federation, the greatest soap opera of all time. And I haven't seen it for probably 20 years. I just love the idea, and it just sits in my head as an idea that's beautiful.
I appreciate, I am not a fan of wrestling, but I do appreciate your approach of acknowledging that it is a soap opera, that
Absolutely.
it's about the drama, the there's not scenery in the ring as such, but the scenery chewing melodramatic performances.
Yeah.
I mean, for my money, if you want to see a good fight, it's going to be Charles Bronson and Toshiro Mifune in our next movie, Red Sun from 1971, directed by British director Terence Young in this Franco-Italian international co-production that was shot in Spain. The synopsis is: an outlaw and a samurai must join forces to bring justice to the Wild West, which is kind of not true.
Begrudgingly true.
Begrudgingly. And it stars American action movie star Charles Bronson, legendary Japanese actor, a modern real-life samurai, Toshiro Mifune.
One of the greats. Mifune is, I'm probably saying the name wrong. He is so awesome. Ever since I saw Seven Samurai, I guarantee that Goku was based off of him because he has this kind of like very extroverted way of acting, especially in the Kurosawa movies.
Right.
And then, of course, I went back and saw him in Rashomon and, all the great Kurosawa classics or the Samurai trilogy. I can't remember the director of those. He's also in one of the Zatoichi movies, Zatoichi Meets Yojimbo.
And that is one of the best movies, and I think that resolves one of the best Zatoichi movies and resolves itself very well, recognizing the magnitude of both of those characters. Because they end up, they come at each other like there's going to be a duel. They have a great fight, but then kind of suss out that they are actually on the same side.
Yes.
End up kind of begrudging allies, kind of like in this movie, in Red Sun. Charles Bronson, it turns out, like one of my notes I found, what are you laughing at?
Everybody in this movie, other than Mifune, is an asshole. And I wasn't expecting that. But then halfway through, I'm like, okay, I really dig this this chemistry they've got going on here.
That's kind of the arc, is that
Yeah.
Mifune brings the Bushido code, discipline from his world into the American Wild West. And yeah, everyone else is an asshole, but everyone there at the time is undisciplined. And part of the arc is his begrudging allyship with Charles Bronson's character teaches him maybe a little bit of compassion, a little bit. It doesn't teach him to loosen up. He doesn't need to loosen up. He is perfectly balanced.
Right.
He knows how to relax and have fun, but I think he wouldn't have given somebody as rough as that character at the time of day, he would have just handled them and moved on. And having to spend time with this guy, he builds a little bit of compassion, and his discipline and his honor kind of rubs off on Charles Bronson,
Yes.
who by the end has begrudging respect for Mifune's character.
And I know a little bit about Charles Bronson. So, of course, I grew up watching The Great Escape and the Death Wish movies. Death Wish 3 in particular is one of the greatest canon movies ever. It is so hilarious. That should have been picked. Well, that'll be our part 2.
No, so hilarious. Let's hold ourselves accountable. So hilarious, is it so bad it's good, or is it where they accidentally made a comedy?
Oh no, it's an accidental comedy. It's brilliant.
Okay.
And he was in like some really classic movies in the 60s, and then he goes into one of the best westerns ever, which is Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure, because this movie came out a year later, I bet you anything they were filmed back to back. Different directors, different production companies, but a lot of actors that went to Italy, so to speak, they did multiple movies before coming back. And this has to be one of those, I'm sure. Well, and just a couple of years later in the 70s in Italy, they were producing a ton of the Giallo pictures, right? And the only really good ones are probably the Dario Argento ones. And those can be hit or miss for me, but I love the stilted acting style in a lot of those movies. And I was trying to look for dubbing in this one, but this movie's dubbing is better than The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, even though that movie's better in general. But this movie was really delightful. I was kind of not knowing what to expect, but I'm like, wait, there's like real star power in this movie.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of action in it. Once you get, if you were to edit down the travel sequences, you'd actually get like a good hour-long action movie probably. I think the basic premise is train robbery. The train happens to be not only carrying regular passengers, but also it's carrying gold from the post office that's being transported from location A to B. It's also transporting an ambassador from Japan, and they get stolen by Charles Bronson's gang. His gang turns on him, and our story is set off. We get a begrudging allyship between Mifune, who is tasked with return the sword that is meant to be the gift to the president from the Emperor of Japan in 7 days, or commit suicide out of Bushido requirement. This movie deals with the Code of Bushido a little bit, probably to a lot of Westerners for maybe the first time. There's not that many, Japanese movies that would have crossed over before this. Like, of course, Kurosawa, but I'm not sure how well watched he was in the States at the time.
I can't think of a better, quote-unquote, cultural ambassador at the time than Toshiro Mifune.
He would have been the actor.
Nothing more needs said, yeah. And when he presents a character like a samurai or like Yojimbo, he has the weapon skills. He has like this amazing face that can do humor, that can do intensity. When he gets ready to attack, it is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and he has this great like physical exuberance too with all of his roles. I think it's in Yojimbo. He does this really cool shoulder shrug when he's walking down streets, and he just has really interesting instincts as an actor. And when I first started watching Japanese actors, I was a little mystified, like, this is good acting, but it's like, no, like, you have to watch them through the filter of culture, right? And they just have a different style than the Westerners are used to. Yes.
Their physicality is almost like ballet, where it's everything is smooth.
Yes.
Emotions are all intentional. It is a skill to do things
right.
very precisely. And Charles Bronson would be a great counterpoint to that. Of everything he does is kind of shrugged and all about being cool and not giving a fuck, and brutal and unstructured. He represents the West, as in there's the lawlessness of the West.
Yeah, and his willingness to, he grows to respect Mifune through Mifune's actions, right? Like, his actions align perfectly with the honor code of Bushido. But Bronson, he really only ends up respecting Mifune the man. He doesn't end up becoming a better person himself, it seems. He's probably going to go off and rob the next train that he has people to do it with.
Yeah, to me it exemplified in a Western that there were options of not being lawless in the lawless West, of not being crude and unrefined in the
Right.
untamed West.
And I also like that it shows that the discipline that Mifune and the other samurais have, comes with, it does have a trade-off cost, which is you are more bound by an honor code. But being bound by an honor code also gives you, frankly, a better looking life, right? Like you're able to extract more meaning. You're way less likely to be hedonistic, which is definitely on display in this movie, right? Like what Mifune does is like anti-hedonistic, whereas what Bronson does is quite hedonistic, up to the point of his own profession, right? He's a train robber. So I also love that they're able to find creative ways to have sword fights in the West when there's a lot of like gunpowdered, enabled weaponry, right? So it's not a one-man show where Mifune is just kind of walking around, because that's what could have happened in this movie, right? Like he could have just been following Charles Bronson around, collecting his paycheck, and Bronson doing all the work. But no, like everyone's got something to do in this movie. Them as a duo, especially near the end, really works for me. It's pretty great, actually.
Yeah.
And I did call that not everyone was going to make it in this movie.
That was the worst part for me. No, go ahead. But that was the worst part, what you're about to say.
It's a little disappointing, the method or manner in which Mifune, spoiler alert, dies. But
yes, Charles Bronson distracts him and he gets shot.
And that's how I interpreted it too. I'm like, oh, is this Bronson's fault? And then Alyssa, my partner for the audience's knowledge, she's like, no, he was actually telling Mifune, no, kill him. Like, you don't need to, our deal doesn't matter.
Right.
But either way, like it leads to his like almost kind of needless death. Like if they had staged it a little differently, it could have been less like that. And I would be more accepting of it, because I kind of thought that he was going to die anyway.
One of their first fights, because when they set off together, Charles Bronson does not have a gun, and that kind of levels the playing field. It would seem, one would presume it levels the playing field, but they get into a fight early on, and Mifune is, at least his character, is so fucking good at fighting, and so specifically well trained at fighting, that instead of just kicking the shit out of Charles Bronson, they get in a fight, and he picks him up, flips him, picks him up, slams him on the ground, then picks him up again, slams him down again 4 times, basically to drive it home. Like, I can beat you. If you come at me, I have the martial arts skills to just toss you and then pick you up and toss you again.
Yep. I can judo throw you. I don't even have to throw a strike. Yeah.
He's not trying to hurt him. It's not even a submission move. It's kind of a dominance move. It's basically teaching him a lesson. Basically establishing like, this is why we should stop fighting.
Yes. And unlike something like Once Upon a Time in the West, where Charles Bronson is on a very focused and specific revenge quest in that movie, in this movie, he's very talkative and very aloof. It's a really interesting contrast.
He's playing a cool guy.
Yeah, he totally is. Like, he's got a lot of dialogue, whereas in Once Upon a Time in the West, it's almost without dialogue, and that's because the tones are totally different. But man, I really enjoyed Red Sun. I thought that it was wonderful.
Yay, I'm glad you liked it.
I'd put it up there with the Trinity movies, those spaghetti westerns. My Name is Trinity and My Name is Nobody. Those are wonderful. And this was a ton of fun. Some editing could have made it a little better in terms of the travel sequences, but again, it's a 2-hour movie, and there's a lot of action spread around, actually.
Yeah.
And there's also just fun character moments, which I wasn't expecting. This is one of those, I would say, bigger budget B-style movies. Kind of like an Escape from New York, where like it looks more expensive than it actually, is. Like, they actually did a really good job, I think.
I mean, that kind of leads us into Turkey Shoot, talking about a wide variety of different kinds of scenes of touching on different genres all at once. Turkey Shoot from 1982, which is also known as Blood Camp Thatcher.
And also known as Escape 2000, I found out on Amazon Prime.
Right. Blood Camp Thatcher actually was what made this movie huge.
That makes sense.
In the UK in 1982. I heard someone talking about how when it came out, like the weekend it came out was a terrible weekend in London because it was cold and it was raining.
Right.
but that there were lines going like around the block to see this movie because people had a lot of angst about the prime minister, whoever she was. This was directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, who also directed Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun 4 in space, and
Yes, the fourth one's in space.
of course, and BMX Bandits. It stars Steve Railsback, Olivia Hussey, and Michael Craig. The synopsis for this movie is: in an authoritarian future, dissidents are herded into prison camps where they are hunted for sport. It's the deadliest game. It's also the dystopic prison camp where all the deviants are just people that the government disagrees with.
Yes. They call it a re-education camp, but really they're just torturing these people. But I have to say, I totally endorse Blood Camp Thatcher as a title. This is the first movie on the list that truly hits my B-movie like funny bone, where it's like this, because Abby, it's like, okay, this is like a less enjoyable blaxploitation movie compared to when I first watched it. We're going to get to a really good one soon, but and then Red Sun, it's got a bigger budget. There's more production behind it. It's got star power, but Blood Camp Thatcher, this is a B movie. This is what we were talking about in our preamble definitions. This is the younger director that has a vision, wants to say something, and there's so much accidental comedy and awkwardness with the performances. There's also people that you can totally root for, and you're rooting for them because the combination of you're on their side, but you also like love the awkwardness. I thoroughly loved this movie. It was so delightful.
I guess an analogy for something like this, I would call it a Taco Bell movie, where Taco Bell has put out things like making a tostada using a giant Cheez-It. You know, it's not good for you.
It's delicious.
It's tasty in a trashy kind of way, and that is absolutely Turkey Shoot or Blood Camp Thatcher. I think we'll go back and forth about which title they use because it was great.
Escape 2000's the not as fun title. That was the US title apparently.
Escape 2000 is actually the title they used for a quasi remake that came out recently, which I just watched, and you all can skip it.
Okay, duly noted.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. They turned it into a game show, so it's almost like
Running Man
or Hunger Games.
Hunger Games wishes it was as cool as Running Man.
Hunger Games wishes it was as cool as Turkey Shoot.
That's also true, because Turkey Shoot, oh my goodness. So we get our soap stars, because I did some research on this after being so thoroughly in love with it. A lot of these actors did come from Australian soap operas, I found
And they brought
out.
that kind of energy.
And
it's big melodrama.
They did. It's great. And they go to this re-education camp. We kind of have our three main characters being transported in the beginning.
Yeah.
And they get convicted of crimes that are definitely not crimes.
Well, I wrote down it's Olivia Hussey plays a shopkeeper who just didn't like seeing one of her customers getting beat up by the cops. And so the cops said, "Why are you objecting to us beating this guy? We're taking you in."
Take her away.
Then there's Linda Stoner, who she says, "Some asshole turned me in for being a whore," which I'm not. Some asshole turned me in for being a whore, which I'm not. I'm like, yeah, that's how the cops work here. They don't care. They'll just they'll go on a rumor.
I kind of see her, by the way, as like a Australian Farrah Fawcett. She really had those vibes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great hair.
Yes, absolutely. Very much the Logan's Run Farrah Fawcett style hair, to give a Logan's Run callback.
And then Steve Railsback, who is definitely the seditious one.
Yes.
He is an anti-establishment.
Yes.
I guess, I don't know what he does other than being an escape artist. He gets arrested all the time, has a reputation for breaking out. When he's arrested, when we first meet him, he's doing a pirate radio broadcast.
Correct. Yeah.
Trying to speak out against this government. Yeah, those kind of things made me feel like this movie, it was good to watch after the 2024 election.
It was cathartic.
Yeah, no, not cathartic, as spooky as in like, yeah, I'm having fun watching this movie, but oh shit, we've got a president who wouldn't mind seeing torture camps where people are hunted.
This movie, so there's great stuff that happens while they're in the camp, but truly the movie proper and the insanity of the directorial choices, it begins when our three our three main heroes plus two other inmates that they kind of rub
Yeah.
elbows with. The five of them are set free
Griff
into
and
the wilderness.
Dodge.
Yes, and they're set free into the wilderness in half-hour intervals and given a head start. And
With
there
the
are
promise of freedom if they can. Basically,
Right.
the head of the camp, Charles Thatcher, has invited all of these political and cultural elites, like
Yes.
heads of industry, weapons manufacturers, to come to the camp and do a fox hunt, where they're going to tell these people that they will earn their freedom if they can stay alive for 24 hours
Yeah.
and not be killed by these hunters.
which we should take as complete bullshit.
Oh, yeah. The hunters are an amazing little menagerie of psychopaths.
Absolutely, including a man's pet beast.
Yes, one of the guys, Tito, brings a fucking wolf man.
Yes. And he is introduced in the most standard, non-operatic way. The camera pans over, bam, there's a guy in like a gorilla costume. And that's just
really.
yeah,
He
yeah,
looks
like a Wolfman
a
costume.
werewolf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's a beast. And then you roll with
With
it.
a top hat on.
With a top hat and a little vest.
Yes.
It's like he would walked off the stage of Young Frankenstein. Like, it's pretty wonderful.
Part of that, I think, was probably in the original script, but this movie was supposed to have a bigger budget. And what
Okay.
happened was last minute, they had a backer pull out, and it was like tens of millions of dollars was taken away from the budget, so they had to pare everything down. And that's where a little bit of the Ozploitation, because this was filmed in Australia, Ozploitation feel comes out when all of the hunters have these tiny cars, basically like service vehicles, that have been retrofitted with. One has a giant fan on the back for no reason to make it look like it could go faster. Everything's a one-seater
Yes.
that has maybe a gun turret like welded onto part of the frame.
There's a lady, one of the hunters is a lady with an exploding arrow supply, or a supply of exploding arrows, a la
Yes.
Rambo 2.
Yes.
And she is hunting the tall one, whatever his name is.
His name was Griff. He's played by Bill Young, and it was a note that I made twice in this little film festival. Two different actors. I was like, wow, he is such a long boy.
Yes, he's super
so
tall.
Tall and gangly. Everything about him.
It's funny too, because Bill Young, that's actually my stepfather's name, and he lived for a time in Australia, so that's pretty great. Doesn't look anything like that guy.
Aw.
That would be amazing. I probably
would've
would
been
have.
amazing.
I probably would have seen this movie a long time ago had that been the case.
All of these bad guys, all these hunters are playing to the peanut gallery.
Yes,
They are chewing the scenery, and that's what makes this movie fun. Is the stakes and the drama are cranked up.
Yes,
Not to diminish anything from Deadly Prey, but in that one, it is the same kind of thing.
but this is more fun than Deadly Prey. Yeah.
It's the same Deadliest Game sort of premise, but that one it's just action. It's like people running into each other, having a fight. Somebody's arm gets cut off, and then they get beaten with their arm in Deadly Prey. In this one, people stop and do speeches. Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone has an axe to grind or a soapbox to stand on and declare things. Yeah, it's more like the soap operatic nature
Yes.
of WWE.
And there's exploding. There's explosive blood effects in this. There's people that get their limbs chopped off. There's people that burn alive. Like it's such a lovely B action schlock movie.
Again, what I was saying about what I appreciate in B movie is variety, where they go for things. Is you can get caught up in the drama of this,
Yes.
and then see someone literally exploded with machine gun fire.
Yes, and there's also
They turned to hamburger.
yes, there's almost a Return of the Living Dead ending where everyone just gets bombed, but they avoid that. The camp
Yes.
gets bombed, but our heroes are able to assemble all the prisoners, and they mount a counteroffensive, which is so incredible. And like
This movie-
there are people like just standing still, upright, shooting
Mm-hmm.
in multiple rows of each other
Yes.
and not hitting anybody. It's so great. That's everything I want from an 80s action movie.
For being a low budget B movie, this one is good because it brings you so much.
Yes.
It gives you so much to see and so much to talk about. and so much to enjoy.
The Farrah Fawcett Australian actress, she is killed by lesbianism is the implication. The female hunter, it's heavily implied that she chose one of our main characters out of sexual appetite, right? This is the thing that I would love about B movies. These things get in.
But it's not not like this is good representation.
No.
It's not good queer representation at all. It's just
This movie well understands that representation or lack thereof is not the same thing as condemnment or condonement.
Right.
Everything is for fun.
It's one aspect of the movie that shows that more thought was put into the story, that there was more of a social commentary to this than just, oh, the grown-ups suck and the press, because that's what most dystopian things can be boiled down to when they're done wrong. It's just, oh man, we gotta be scrappy and do the best we can with whatever we can find because we're being told that we can't listen to rock and roll, man.
Right.
In this one, that aspect of the female hunter is supposed to be a commentary on homosexuality being one of the things that's deemed deviancy in this movie, and that people are being sent to re-education camps for. And yet, this woman who I think is a weapons manufacturer,
right, is
one of the elite. She gets to come to camps and be hosted as a guest to hunt people.
Right.
She is also a transgressor, and it shows that the corruption innate in this society.
Yes, there's actually a kind of history of this that I'm beginning to just self-teach myself because I've never found a book that really covers this. But throughout history, it's obvious that homosexuality in various forms was either criminalized or just severely looked down upon, to say the least. Mm-hmm. But there are figures in history.
Well, I would say scapegoated, which I think is probably where you're going with this.
Yes, but there are figures in history that get a pass on it. And like if we take not too long ago, Great Britain in the 40s, mm-hmm. why was John Maynard Keynes a figure that I think is a very interesting man? Why was he given a pass and Alan Turing wasn't? And it's literally same time.
What they did to Alan Turing was
it really, I think, comes down to who you know. So
mm-hmm.
there is definitely
your status in society reflects how much you have to follow society and obey society.
Right.
It's
and those network effects are in this movie. Yeah. Right. Like this lady is a part of the elite. It's whenever you're a part of the elite in these kinds of societies, it's always rules for thee, but not for me. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's very much on, I would imagine when it was a bigger budget movie that there was more of that in the movie, but they probably had to cut it and make it action schlock.
Yeah. I will throw that out as the bad side of B movies sometimes is this is also where we get a lot of indulgence in violence, and sometimes it's fun, but sometimes it's also indulgence in cruelty.
Right.
In misrepresentation, racism, sexism, all the bad stuff is in these movies too. And sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt, or you have to reconsider your fandom about some movies.
Right. And I'm typically a holder of salt for a lot of that stuff. Like in this movie in particular, I think it actually skates out on this because when they're in the camp, over the loudspeaker, they're giving them like the things that are illegal. Like mm-hmm. sexual promiscuity among the prisoners is not strictly banned, but if you get pregnant, you'll be forcibly aborted and probably killed yourself. Also, if you get an STD, you're executed. Right. And I think, what is it? Also, homosexuality is death penalty condemnable as well. So it's very interesting. They set up right out the gate, like this is what the society considers illegal, but this villainess is one of those things. So I actually do think it was probably a holdover from what the movie used to be, which mm-hmm. was more of a commentary on the hypocrisy of the elites versus the law.
And one of the things you mentioned is also worth zooming in on. The sexual promiscuity amongst the prisoners is tenuously allowed.
Right.
Because before this announcement, we were shown that sexual assault from the guards
is totally okay.
Staff is completely overlooked and totally okay. There's not a code of ethics for them.
Right.
And in that way, I mean, this is me drawing an unexpected line between Blood Camp Thatcher and Come and See. that really heavy movie we watched and we talked thoroughly about last time that exemplified in it Nazi war crimes. This schlocky movie carries with it the same kind of warnings of don't forget that happened.
Right.
I have been making a list on the Miscellaneous Film Festival Letterboxd account for movies that deserve a remake.
I was thinking that as I was watching this.
Sadly, this movie has been remade. Like I said, I just watched it and it was bullshit. So it deserves a better remake.
Right.
And as I was watching this, I was kind of fan casting. I thought amongst the hunters, the evil oligarchical hunters, either Charles Thatcher or one of the others, Tim Curry would have been great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He just has that wonderful like Cheshire cat smile. It would have worked so well in a movie like this.
And he knows how to be magnificently evil.
I can't imagine a modern director that I would trust with this, to be honest.
Oh,
like, you know who I would want to have it done? I would want like Richard Donner to do it.
yeah.
Like Richard, if he were still alive, Richard Donner of Lethal Weapon and Superman fame. That would be pretty wonderful, actually. But now, as much as any of the action stars or movies or directors that we can think of, I think everything pales in comparison to the action masterpiece of Miami Connection, which is totally what we should transition to.
Yeah, no. 1987's Miami Connection was directed by Woo-Sang Park, co-directed by
YK Kim,
who also co-wrote and did all the choreography because he is a master of Taekwondo.
For real.
For real.
Not
I watched,
like Steven Seagal.
I need to send you this video. I watched a little documentary that Vice did about...
Yeah, I've seen that. It's wonderful.
Oh, it explains all the history of the rediscovery of Miami Connection. I need to point out that this movie stars in the lead YK Kim himself and the Dragon Sound Orphans, a whole microcosm.
A motley crew, for sure.
But a plucky and positive bunch of singer-songwriter, taekwondo, world peace enthusiasts. The synopsis of this movie is, in a world where ninjas dream of being rock stars and rock stars dream of being ninjas, one band fights for good against Florida's most notorious motorcycle ninjas. Did that sound like a meandering sentence that was full of repetition and didn't go anywhere?
I mean, listen, it was still accurate.
Welcome to the Miami Connection.
Yes.
My smartass spent the whole movie going, shouldn't this be called the Orlando Connection?
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't, because it's about the gang, Jeff's gang. We'll explain who Jeff is in a minute. Jeff's gang in Orlando has a connection to the biker ninjas in Miami, and it's about his connection showing up in Orlando.
Just like the French Connection.
Yeah.
The same quality, really. William Friedkin's got nothing on YK Kim's brilliance. Now, for the audience, I will apologize. I love William Friedkin.
I will confess, I was not a fan of the Miami Connection.
No!
Like we were saying with B movies, sometimes it's all about finding it at the right time, or it finds you at the right time. This was not the right time for me in the Miami Connection to come together. However, there is a lot to be said for this movie, and it is a vastly popular movie, almost like Tommy Wiseau's The Room. It's one that has a cult following that's substantial, and
yes, like Samurai Cops.
It has been uplifted through sincere, enthusiastic appreciation from a forgotten B movie that was lost for years and years. I mean, not completely lost out of circulation, but that no one was really talking about.
God bless Draft House Pictures.
Well, do you want to tell the story about kind of the resurgence of the Miami Connection?
Yeah, I think it was released, like you said, in '87 to like a couple theaters. And
yeah,
I don't know what the original run looked like.
YK Kim, the Vice documentary that we'll probably put a link to in the description for this, he talks about how he took the film to 100+ distributors, and absolutely everyone told him if he wanted to stop losing money on this movie because the budget for this was $1 million.
Right.
That came out of YK Kim's own pocket, and he said he went broke in the first 10 days of filming, and started having to sell his possessions. He'd also just recently gotten married, so his marriage was now going through the tension of him having to find more money to pour into this.
Right.
And then, like I said, later on, he's trying to get distribution for it, and everyone's turning him down, saying it's trash.
No, YK Kim, there's a wonderful interview with him. He's telling the interviewer, listen, if you're looking for a movie that has great drama and a compelling love story and, you know, sophisticated acting, this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a movie that promotes the beauty of Taekwondo, of friendship,
Mm-hmm.
and the true value of world peace, and it's full of action, this is the movie for you. I couldn't agree with them more.
100%. No, I agree too. This is one of those movies that is beaming with heart.
Yes, it is a passion project through and through.
Every criticism I have for this is someone else's strength. For me, watching it the whole time, I was very aware, just from the performances, that this was a group of friends.
Yes.
These are people who have never made a movie, have never acted in a movie, kind of coming together, and just the cameras start running, just start talking. You're mad at him. Go. That was a little too improvisational and constantly teetering off the rails for me.
Oh yeah. No, there's all of that. That's totally true. I just there's so many strange shifts of tone in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
They go from, like, for one instance, so all of our main characters, they all practice Taekwondo. They all go to college together, even though they all look like they're in their 30s or 40s.
And they're all in a band.
And they're all in a rock and roll band that play the greatest music that I've ever heard in my life.
And they all play at the one and only club in
The
Orlando,
one and only
Florida.
club. Right. And they are going to get into a conflict with a motorcycle riding ninja gang who are drug dealers.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, they get in a conflict. Are you jumping ahead on purpose?
Oh, no, not yet. They also get in a conflict, though, with just
A rival band who wants to play at the same venue. And apparently that venue can only have one band at a time.
Yes.
And the rival
Like,
band
there's-
gets quote-unquote fired just because our hero's band, Dragon Sound,
Dragon Sound.
is better. And so in this world, that turns into a street fight.
Yes, and I actually, now I have to say this. For a B movie, you can tell that YK Kim ran like a Taekwondo dojo.
Mm-hmm.
The fight scenes in this are genuinely pretty fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a B movie where people are awkwardly kind of like wiggling around. Like, the fights are actually pretty well filmed, all things considered. Like, you're not going to get Jackie Chan camera work in stunts,
Mm-hmm.
but it's solid, actually. Like, the fights are actually, for me, a ton of fun. I don't know the actor or character name, but kind of the second main character. He's the tall one.
Oh, that's the other boy I was talking about. Where's my note? Hold on.
He has the most amazing performance in this movie.
Where's my other long boy? Hold on. Hold on.
He's so long that even
Yes.
when he runs, he like tucks his head forward as he runs.
You-
It's so great.
You are speaking of Vincent Hirsch, who played John.
Yes, I am.
The love
Yes.
interest, the male love interest in our story, who I also
Yes.
called a quite long boy because everything about him seems to be stretched out.
Yes. And he has some of the greatest emotions on camera ever. He does these battle cries that are so out of place and so wonderful. And also, I do know from some behind the scenes, the woman that plays the counterpart to him, the love interest in
Female
this
love
movie,
interest, yes.
yes, her actual boyfriend was one of the other band members in this movie. So they would send him off to go do something while they filmed their makeout scenes.
Like to hide it from him, or just so?
Yes,
'cause
to hide it from him. Like, he was apparently unaware until the movie was like done, which I think is hilarious.
oh man,
It's like, YK Kim, why didn't you just have them play each other's love interest? No, this is the way to go. Like,
Well, and see, that's I give my compliment to this is it also brings a lot of variety. We have ninjas
does.
who are bikers. We have band members who are also Taekwondo black belts. They're all black belts.
Yes.
We have the heartwarming story of this little coterie of friends all being orphans until we find out that one of them, Jim, has received notification from his long lost father, but he's gonna have a chance to reconnect with them. Maybe
my mother was Korean. My dad was American.
my dad was
They're
black
having this-
American.
They're having this goofy, almost Saved by the Bell moment. And then he starts reading this letter in this amazing synthesizer pad, like ambient
Oh my
Brian Eno
goodness.
soundscape comes over the score of the movie. And he starts reading this letter about his father is alive and found him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh my God, like the tone of this totally shifts. YK Kim has the most amazing line, which is, but I thought we were all orphans. And he has this amazing...
Which comes out of
broken-
nowhere. That's not established anywhere before that line.
Nowhere. And they carry him out of the house on their shoulders, celebrating the fact of fatherhood. It is so wonderful.
That would be so ridiculous. And such a, like you said, a weird divergent plot point if it didn't come back later and
And
get
it
resolved.
does.
And it does with all the fake gray hair that you can imagine.
Yes. After a complete bloodbath has occurred.
Oh, yeah. Let's not forget that this movie,
yes.
while it's all about positivity, world peace, and
Our heroes are not above completely destroying their opponents.
there are some.
Now, I don't think they kill anyone until they kill the bad brother. And that's by accident.
Mm-hmm.
But then, when their friend is, they think, killed or at least fatally wounded,
Mm-hmm.
our two main characters, YK Kim and Vincent Hirsch, they go ape shit
with
and-
swords all of a sudden.
with swords
In the jungles.
and they are completely wiping out every ninja that they see.
Mm-hmm.
It is so great. There's an original ending to this movie actually where where their black friend dies in the car.
We can
to
call
the
it. We can call him Jim. He has,
Oh, okay. I always forget his name. I forget all these character names.
or we can call him Maurice Smith, the actor, the now acclaimed actor Maurice Smith, who was in the Miami Connection.
I mean, he ought to be acclaimed. That performance is pretty amazing. He even cries a little. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
There's actual tears. And yeah, I love the fight scenes in this movie. There's a moment where they go to a train yard to have a fight scene, and it is so great. There's such amazing music in the score, not to mention the actual like music that the band performed. I wanted my picks to be something that people either don't really know that much about or just have forgotten. I think you actually did better on that criteria than I did. I'd never heard of Red Sun or Blood Camp Thatcher. They were wonderful. So, no, I'm very happy that you tried out Miami Connection. Now, I have a pretty good hunch, though, that you did enjoy the last movie that was picked. And now this movie, folks, is one of my favorite movies of all time.
It is, of course, Petey Wheatstraw from 1977, directed and written by Cliff Rockmore. It's also co-written and starring the great, the wonderful, the outspoken, the undeniable Rudy Ray Moore. If this is the
Yes.
first time you're hearing that name, you need to look it up on Letterboxd
Yes.
and check out all of his movies.
There are 4 key movies of Rudy Ray Moore that you need to watch, everybody. Dolomite, The Human Tornado, Petey Wheatstraw, and Disco Godfather. That is the
Oh, yeah.
quadrilogy of Rudy
Oh,
Ray
yeah.
Moore.
And there's so many more other movies that aren't Rudy Ray Moore movies
Yeah.
that he showed up in. He was poet comedian, this great genre kind of crossover where he would
He has this amazing exuberance to him. Rudy Ray Moore is not one to mince words. He is also not a quiet man.
oh no. Throughout the movie, he will speak in rhyme at any point
Yes.
for any reason, and it's always good.
I took the day and turned it into yesterday. As he says in the opening
I got a
prologue.
note from the opening prologue as well, where he says, "I can sit on a tombstone and produce baby ghosts."
And produce baby.
So the synopsis for this movie is: Killed by rival show promoters, stand-up comedian Petey Wheatstraw makes a deal with the devil for a second chance at life.
Oh, yeah. And Rudy Ray Moore delivers, as he always does. We haven't mentioned when he's a little kid. He was born fully formed as an 8-year-old in a very Mel Brooks scene.
Yes, an 8-year-old Clifford Rockmore II.
And he proceeds to attack his doctor that delivers him because he slaps him on the ass after being born.
And then he attacks his dad,
Yes.
who was played by Cy Richardson. Cy Richardson's in a bunch of movies, including
Yes.
Repo Man,
Yes.
just to name one. He is a great actor.
Yes. And Petey Wheatstraw, before he decides to become a world famous, or at least somewhat famous comedian,
Yeah.
he decides that he wants to learn martial arts.
Yes.
And he is taught by a martial arts master. And then at the very end of his training, where he is chopping up watermelons and fighting his teacher and learning the art, he suddenly does an about face and says, actually, teacher, I've always wanted to be a comedian.
and it's great because his teacher says, you must pursue that to the highest level of skill that you can.
Yes. By the way, I didn't realize it when I picked this movie with Miami Connection. There is a overlap here, which is two rival acts.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of vie for control over the
Yes.
same venue.
Yes.
Because we have Skillet
And Leroy.
And Leroy. Yeah, Leroy and Skillet.
Yeah, a comic duo who in this are producers, promoters. Coincidentally, they've picked a night when Petey Wheatstraw is going to be performing.
Yes, and they are invested. They're given a large sum of money by Mr. White, played by the White investor, who is giving them money, and he's expecting a return on his investment.
Mm-hmm.
And they are like, "Well, we're the only act in town. We're going to clean house. Like, we've got this under control." Little do they know, Petey Wheatstraw's heading to town.
And he is bigger and badder and more famous, and they don't stand a chance. So what do? They send Scarface Willie to...
I think the idea is he's going to rough up Rudy Ray Moore, but instead he accidentally shoots a little kid.
Yes.
And the little kid's awesome, by the way. So it hurts even more.
The character's name is Larry, who was played by Brian L. Rockmore, son of our writer-director.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. After this little kid is shot, they go to the kid's funeral, and then on exit of the funeral, the attendees of the funeral also all get shot by the rival gang. And then Petey Wheatstraw is greeted by Mr. I think it's, what does he say it? Lou Cypher? I think that's how he says it, or how it's printed on the card.
Wheatstraw, he hands him his card, and Petey Wheatstraw misreads the name. Oh, there's a typo.
There is a
Lucifer's
typo.
Card.
A typographical error.
But that kind of blew me away. I mean, even after watching Turkey Shoot and Miami Connection, where people are getting shot up or cut up and killed, I was still surprised and shocked to see a church being
shot up. Yeah.
Somebody pulling up and blowing up the congregates at a kid's funeral.
Yes. And that the devil shows up.
The devil shows up and makes a deal with Petey Wheatstraw that Petey Wheatstraw marries the devil's daughter. He can get a second chance at life. It turns out the devil really wants a son-in-law more than anything.
Yes.
Okay.
His daughter needs a husband, man.
And his daughter is in a state where she's having a hard time finding a suitor, I guess. And so Petey Wheatstraw agrees. And what happens is he is brought back to life, and the devil also turns back time and brings all the congregants of the church back to life as well.
But not the little kid. That little kid's still fucked.
But not Larry. And that was a note I made. Dead. I went, wait a second.
The devil's still an asshole. Even though he saves our hero.
I mean, it makes sense. The devil is an asshole.
And he also is bestowed the devil's scepter, which grants him Bruce Almighty powers. Bruce Almighty wishes it was as good as this movie.
Right.
And he runs around turning fat people into skinny people. He gives someone a new car, I think.
He just makes it rain money.
He does. He makes it rain money as he's walking toward the camera, looking at the camera in complete bliss.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I was also a big fan of the actor who played Lucifer, G. Tito Shaw, as one of the coolest depictions of the devil
Absolutely.
I've seen. I think actually I haven't seen the devil portrayed this way as someone you can talk to very easily, who's not
Yes.
who's not smooth and manipulative,
Yeah.
he's just an older guy who needs a favor, needs you to help out his daughter. And he even lets Rudy Ray Moore delay payment.
Yes.
You could work with this guy. It sounds like a more affable devil than I've ever seen.
You know, Rudy, Petey Wheatstraw, he's a very moral man. He has wonderful turns of phrase. He also comes up with the idea of, I'm going to try to get out of my contract with the devil. I'm going to keep the scepter. He uses the scepter to drive out Leroy and Skillet in an amazing musical number that they're doing.
Yes.
That there's a trombone player that's playing a valved trombone and keyboards at the same time. And
Very hard to do. Very hard
to do. And the song they are playing has one chord that just repeats over and over, and it's extremely infectious. And all hell breaks loose in that theater when Rudy comes in with his scepter.
Yes.
He makes it snow. He makes people's wigs fly off.
Yeah.
And when he's trying to avoid detection from Lucifer, he decides that they're going to capture some wino, dope him up, and put a mask of Rudy Ray Moore's face onto him.
Because it turns out someone in his crew is really great at making fake masks.
The transition of showing us the end result of the mask is amazing, because it is just Rudy Ray Moore playing the other guy on the couch.
I mean, that's
it
how you
is
do
so
that.
wonderful.
Oh no, it's glorious.
Yeah. These are like the Excalibur of blaxploitation movies, is those four quintessential Rudy Ray Moore ones, along with maybe I would say Superfly, Shaft, Black Coffee, and Foxy Brown. It's that short list of like the really just grade A blaxploitation films. They're amazing. And for people that are not fully convinced by this conversation on Petey Wheatstraw, there is an amazing kind of retrospective review of it on Red Letter Media on YouTube. They do a fantastic job of this movie, and it's on their Best of the Worst series, and they cover it so well. And yeah, it's just when I first saw it, I was in love with it from second number one. This is to me is one of the greatest, B movies ever. I thought that way about like The Human Tornado, but then I saw Petey Wheatstraw, and it's just a complete level up. Dolomite's wonderful, but
Dolomite was the first one I saw. That got me in the door.
It's great. And also for people interested, the Eddie Murphy My Name is Dolomite Netflix movie is genuinely amazing. It's really good.
Well, we were talking about like YK Kim
Yes.
struggling to get his movie made and struggling.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Rudy Ray Moore went through the same thing. He was somebody who pulled themselves up by their bootlaces. He decided he wanted to take his career to another level. People weren't necessarily handing him opportunities. So he just said, you know what? I want to be a movie star. I'll just make a movie.
Yep. He just did it.
I'll just throw it together. What do people like? Kung Fu? Cool. I'll be doing Kung Fu.
I'll do Kung Fu.
If and when and however I can in this movie.
Yes.
What else do we need? Beautiful women? Sure. Petey Wheatstraw is going to be granted an orgy by the devil.
He is going to fuck the demons out of multiple people on the same bed in the same scene.
That was such a weird scene because the devil takes him to an abandoned building where it turns out inside, magically, of course, it's the devil. There's a beautiful bedroom filled with gorgeous lady demons who all have, I know that they're horns, but it looks like they have nipples on their foreheads.
Or like little marshmallows that have been stuck on their forehead.
Right. And then it just goes into basically a Benny Hill routine of him with the speed cranked up on the film and him bouncing from one lady to another, doing
with incredible looks back to the camera and funk music.
Because he's going for a world record in cunnilingus. And you know what?
It is so amazing.
He achieves it.
It's so incredible. And no, I also
It is because they cut to the very end and cut to like 10 minutes later. All the lady demons are passed out with ecstasy.
They're just all over the room laying around.
He has satisfied all of hell, basically.
We were talking about B movies that are made intentionally as not being as good. I gotta say though, a really good gateway drug to blaxploitation movies like this is actually Black Dynamite. That's a self-aware movie, but I think it does what it does really well. Like, it's kind of it kind of breaks through the wall of being just fan fiction. Like, it's people that genuinely understand what makes blaxploitation tick. Just everything about this movie, a lot like Miami Connection for me. It is a passion project. You can kind of see all of the 4 great Rudy Ray Moore movies as that.
And you can see where restrictions, where the restrictions were, where the budget ran out, or where the budget just couldn't go. Like you said, when hordes of demons show up, they're usually just people in capes and leotards.
It's so good.
With some kind of horn.
Yep. Who needs special effects? That's for chumps. The devil's scepter just has like a bunch of foil on the end of it that's shiny. He's half the time he's holding it wrong, it seems like. It's great. Petey Wheatstraw is an incredible movie. It also has one of the most amazing endings. The confrontation at the end with the devil is great. Rudy Ray Moore like raps him to death.
Yes.
He gives this amazing incantation rap kind of thing. Then they throw a dirty pile of laundry off the building that's lit on fire. That's the devil's body flying down.
Yes. Because we couldn't afford a mannequin.
Right. Whatever.
Yeah.
The ethos of these movies is very much like Ed Wood, right? Like, the little details are not what people come to the theater for. It's about the big picture.
By the way, thank you so much for turning me on to Abby, Petey Wheatstraw, and I am really glad. I know it didn't turn out to be a movie for me, but to be introduced to Miami Connection any other way wouldn't have been as great. So this was probably the best way, and to get to talk to someone about it who really enjoys it.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you liked Petey Wheatstraw. I mean, I kind of thought you would. Miami Connection was the only one that I was like really crossing my fingers for, because the others were like shoe-in. But Petey Wheatstraw, it's such an amazing movie. I'm so happy you got to watch it. And yeah, I definitely think that we should have a part 2.
A B-movie part 2?
There's many more out there.
I mean, I'm down. Look out for part 2 of B-movies from the Miscellaneous Film Festival podcast. Thanks again, Dustin.
Thank you.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks for checking out our episode on B-movies with Dustin Bartolucci. Any links to videos we've discussed or articles we talked about, we share those on our social media, including Blue Sky and Facebook. You can also find more episodes and shorts on YouTube and Spotify. We'll see you next time. Cheers.
Flying saucers, giant bugs, it's a ride. In this movie marathon, we'll never hide. Soundtrack bumping, hearts open wide. Let's get lost in the scene side by side.